Tov, everyone. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be the Torah study with Rabbi and Reb Reuven. Good to have you all here. Those of you who are in the chat room and those of you who are just watching, good to have you all here. Let's see who we have in the chat room. Donald and Shoshi and Marshall so far, with others to come. As you may remember, that last week we finished the Sefer Bereshit, and I want to thank all of you who stuck through the whole thing. I think Donald, I think you were through every single one of them. I cannot remember a session that we had that you weren't there at. Mazel tov to everybody. And as we said last week, we're going to catch up tonight with the last of the Sefer Haggadah related to Bereshit. And then we are going to start the Sefer Shemot. Very appropriate because we are going into Pesach in a very, very short time. So, okay, so before we get started, we'll say the bracha for the study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so we left off in the Sefer Haggadah. Just in case you're wondering, because I keep referring to it, we're talking about this book here, the Book of Legends, or the Sefer Haggadah. And we left off on Yaakov's going down to Mitzrayim. So pick up there. We do not have much to go in here, so this is going to be short, and that will complete the in-depth study of Bereshit. So, Rabbi Chaya bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yonanan, by rights, Yaakov should have gone down to Mitzrayim in chains of iron, but his merit availed him. As it is said, because of my love for Yaakov, I drew Yisrael with cords, with bands of love. Thus I was to Yisrael as one that lifteth up the yoke from the jaws of animals, making it easier for Yisrael to sustain the burden of servitude. Okay. Moving on, of Yaakov's going down to Mitzrayim, Rabbi Bechiara, citing Rabbi Yehuda bar Shimon, told this parable. An attempt was made to draw a cow to the slaughterhouse, but she refused to move. What was done? Her young one was pulled ahead of her, and she reluctantly, unwillingly followed. So too Yaakov should have gone down to Mitzrayim in shackles, with an iron collar about his neck. But the Holy One said, shall I have my firstborn son go down in such disgrace? Even if I induce Pharaoh to bring him down personally, I will not have Yaakov going down turned into a public spectacle. Instead, I shall draw Yaakov's son in front of him, and then of his own, albeit reluctantly, unwillingly, Yaakov will quietly follow. Another interpretation, and with Yosef, he was brought down to Mitzrayim. Yosef brought down the presence to him in Mitzrayim. Okay. Now we go on to the death and burial of Yaakov. And Yaakov called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may reveal to you. And so on. What Yaakov was about to reveal to his sons was the time of the redemption was to come. But the presence departed from the Shekinah. When they talk about the presence, they're talking about the Shekinah. But the Shekinah departed from him. So he said, Could it be, God forbid, that my bed has produced an unfit son, as happened to Abraham and my father's father, out of whom sprang Ishmael, or as happened to my father Isaac, out of whom sprang Esau. His sons assured him of their steadfast, Hear, O Israel, our father, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Just as in your heart there is only the one, so in our hearts there is only the one. Then our father Yaakov pronounced for the first time the benediction, Blessed be the name whose glorious kingdom is forever and ever. Hence, it is reported in the name of Rabbi Samael, every day, morning and evening, Jews say, In the cave of Machpelah, where you are at rest, hear, O Israel, our Father, what you commanded us, we still practice. The Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And they came to the threshing floor for brambles. But is the threshing floor ever used for brambles? Rabbi Abahu explained that the verse implies that as a threshing floor is fenced by a hedge of brambles, so was Yaakov's coffin encompassed by crowns. Now, this is something that we heard Rashi talk about last week. Our son, four sons of Esau and Ishmael and of Keturah came together. They came, so it is taught, to wage war against the sons of Yaakov. But when they saw Yaakov's crown hung upon Yosef's crown hung upon Yaakov's coffin, they all took off their crowns, and they too hung them upon Yaakov's coffin. It is taught that 36 crowns were hung upon Yaakov's coffin, encompassing it. When they came to the cave of Machpelah, Esau appeared and sought to prevent Yaakov's burial in it, saying, This cave has room for only 4 couples. Since Yaakov buried Leah in his place, the plot that remains is mine. Yaakov's sons replied, But you sold your portion to our father. Esau retorted, Even if I did sell my claim as firstborn to an additional portion of my father's estate, did I sell also the original single portion due me as an heir? They said, You sold that also. Esau said, Show me the bill of sale. The bill of sale is in Mitzrayim. Who will go and bring it from there? Let Naphtali go. He is as swift as a hind. It also happened that Hushim, son of Dan, who was hard of hearing, was standing there. When he asked, What's going on? He was told, This one is holding us up until Naphtali returns from Mitzrayim. Hushim asked, And until Naphtali returns from Mitzrayim, is my father to lie shamefully unburied? So he seized the club and struck Esau on the head so hard that his eyes fell out of their socket and dropped at Yaakov's feet. At this Yaakov opened his eyes and smiled. Hence Scripture's assurance that the righteous man will rejoice when he seeth revenge. He will bathe his feet in the blood of the wicked. At that moment, Rivka's prophecy, why should I be bereaved of you both in one day, was fulfilled. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father had died, they said, It may be that Joseph bears a grudge against us. What did they see that made them afraid? As they were returning from burying their father, they saw that Joseph turned off the road and went to look at the pit into which his brothers had cast him. Upon seeing this, they said, He still bears a grudge in his heart. Now that our father is dead, he will make his hatred of us felt. But in fact, Joseph's motive was pious one. He wanted to utter a blessing for the miracle wrought for him in that place. And finally, and he comforted them. He spoke persuasively to them. Rabbi Elazar teaches when Yosef had to say what Yosef had to say was indeed persuasive. He said, If 10 lamps could not extinguish one, how is one lamp to extinguish 10? Which, again, we go back and between Rashi's comment and the further commentary, we got a further explanation of that statement about the 1 lamp and the 10 lamps. So that, my friends, completes the study of the Sefer Bereshit. And now we move on to the Sefer Shemot. Kat and David, good to see that you joined us. I hope you are staying healthy and that you will remain that way. So we begin with the Sefer the Shemot, Parsha Shemot. That is, if I can get the pages to turn. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we are at Parak Aleph, Pasuk Aleph. So, okay, so verse 1. And these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Mitzrayim with Yaakov, each man and his household came. Rashi goes on to say here that, and these are the names of the children of Israel. Although he counted them by their names in their lifetime, he counted them again after their death, to make known how precious they are to him. The children of Israel are counted by name because they are compared to the stars, which he brings out and brings in by number and by their names. As it says, He who takes out their hosts by number, he calls them all by name. Okay, so the further commentary on this one, with regard to, I just saw it. Where did I say? Oh, okay. To make known how precious they are to him. Their preciousness is shown by their being counted a second time. And where it regards, he will bring them out, bring in by number and, no, wait a minute. They are compared to the stars. Gaze now toward the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them. So shall be your offspring. Okay, from Genesis 15:5. And that is there is no commentary on 2, 3, and 4. So we'll go right from there into 5. So verse 2, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehudah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Verse 4, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. Verse 5, and all the persons who emerged from Yaakov's loins were 70 souls, and Yosef was in Mitzrayim. Okay, so Rashi goes on to talk about verse 5, and he says, and Yosef was in Mitzrayim, where he and his sons, not among the 70 souls mentioned earlier in the verse. What does the Torah teach us by mentioning Yosef specifically? It could not be the fact that he was living in Mitzrayim, for would we have not known that he was in Mitzrayim? But this clause is included to inform you of the righteousness of Yosef. He was Yosef who tended the flocks of his father, and he was the same Yosef who was in Mitzrayim and became a king. Yet he stood firm in his righteousness despite this radical change in his life. Okay, no further commentary on this one. There's no commentary on 6, so we'll go right from 6 into 7. Yosef died, and all his brothers, and that entire generation. Which I find kind of odd that there's no commentary on here, because the rabbis do talk quite a bit about this. Yosef died, and all his entire generation, and who was the last to die, and and how long it was between that period and the enslavement and stuff like that. Maybe when we go to the Sefer Haggadah or the Mishnah, we'll find out a little more about this. 7, the children of Israel were fruitful, teemed, increased, and became strong, very, very much so, and the land became filled with them. Very brief comment on here by Rashi, and they teemed, for they would give birth to 6 children from one womb, i.e. from a single pregnancy. The further commentary on this one says, Shemot Rabbah 1:8, Tehumah 5. The verse uses 6 expressions of increase. Baru, they were fruitful. Vayishratzu, teemed. Vayirabu, increased. Vayatzmu, became strong. Bemod, very. Meod, very much. Okay. So we go on to verse 8. Just check in the chat room and see if... Good. Glad to hear you folks are doing well. Good. Okay. Verse 8. A new king, and I want you to pay attention here, because this is something Rashi doesn't actually talk about, but it's something that I found very, very interesting, and doing a little bit of research on it, what can I say? It says, a new king arose over Mitzrayim who did not know Yosef. Okay, the word king, V'yakam melech, okay, is used rather than the term Paro. That's significant. Okay, so let's go on and see what Rashi has to say. Rashi says, and a new king arose. Rav and Shmuel differ about this in Talmud. One says this means a new king in the literal sense, and the other one says it was the same king who was the ruler during the lifetime of Yosef, but he issued new edicts. Now, we had talked about this many times before, about when the righteous man comes into the land, blessing comes into the land with him, or when the righteous man leaves, blessing goes with him. Okay, so the Paro, now I disagree with the rabbi here, because, it's the same king, but he issued new edicts. He knew about the God of Israel. And he knew that because Yosef had come into the land, blessing had come into the land, and even greater blessing came into the land when Yaakov came into the land also. Because remember, when Yaakov came into the land, the famine stopped. Okay, so why would a king who had seen these blessings, all of these blessings, basically had saved his entire, kingdom or empire, since he was a paro, it wouldn't be a kingdom, it would be an empire. Why would he suddenly change his edicts? Doesn't really make sense. Okay, however, if it means a new king in the literal sense, as Rav says, then it makes sense, because a new king would not have known Yosef and would not have known Yaakov. He would not also have known about Yosef's brothers, about the Tzaddikim that his brothers were, and how they had actually been blessed. Now, there is let's finish up what Rashi has to say in the further commentary, and I'm going to kind of dig into this a little more. Okay, so it goes on to say, I'm going to just keep up with the chat room. I do have a tendency to kind of ignore the chat room, and I'm not doing it intentionally. It's just, I get going on a roll, and I get focused on something, and everything just kind of disappears around it. But I'm going to try to pay a little more attention Guy has joined us. See, I am paying attention, and I just want to make sure I haven't missed anybody. Okay, so I'm going to try and pay a little more attention to the chat so that I can keep up with that, just in case people have questions or have comments and stuff that we can comment on it. So, continuing on with verse 8 and what Rashi says, he got referring to who did not know. He acted as if he did not know Yosef. Okay, so the further commentary related to this, he acted as if he did not know Yosef. This is from Shemot Rabbah 1.8, Tractate Sota, folio 11a. According to the opinion that the verse refers to an actual new king, the phrase, who did not know Yosef, may be taken literally. But according to the opinion that this was the same Paro who ruled during Yosef's lifetime, it must be understood to mean that he acted as if he did not know Yosef. Mizrahi states that this comment is not independent. It is a continuation of the preceding comment. In fact, in his version, Rashi reads V'asher lo yada with a conjunctive vav added to the biblical text. Accordingly, the flow of Rashi's words is, but he issued new edicts, and the phrase, who did not know, is to be understood as he acted as if he did not know Yosef. Okay, so again, I'm going to depart from Rashi and then the commentary, just to give you my own opinion, because we know right about this time there was a change in Mitzrayim. Okay, and the Hyksos come in about this time. Now, the term Hyksos, as I understand it, the term Hyksos means foreign ruler, which means that somebody had come in and deposed the Paro and his family and had taken over Mitzrayim and was now ruling it as a king rather than as a Paro. And again, this is just based on my studies and what my thoughts are. I mean, you may think different. You may think I'm completely out of my mind, but so be that. You wouldn't be the first ones to say that. This is why it says that that he did not know. He wouldn't have been there during the time that Yosef had come and everything had come into Pharaoh's hands through Yosef. He would not have been there during the time when Yaakov came into the land and the famine stopped. He wouldn't know any of this. He would just simply come in, as a conquering entity and take over and establish a kingship in Mitzrayim instead of the Pharaoh. Later he is actually referred to Pharaoh, but this is very key that it starts out right at the very beginning of Shemot and calls him a king and refers to him as a king many, many times in there. In fact, it kind of interchanged. Prior to this, in Bereshit, Paro was always referred to as Paro. It isn't until we get into Shemot that we see this king term actually pop up in reference to the ruler of Mitzrayim. And then later on we see sometimes he's referred to as king, sometimes he's referred to as Paro, and so on. Okay, so getting back to this, the Hyksos actually come into this, and this is the theory that I've kind of come up with. Now, we know that Yosef had asked for the Bnei Israel to be put into the land of Goshen. And we know what a Goshen is. It's a very fertile place. And we know that, my theory is when things start going to the... Pharaoh actually wanted the children of Israel there in Goshen. They were a buffer. He knew that these shepherds were not weaklings. They were very strong people, and they knew how to fight. And he wanted them there to protect that, because at that time, that these wars among kings and stuff like that are constantly going on. We see this with the Philistines and Amalek and so on and so forth during this time. A lot of wars going on, and it's not unseen that somebody would come and attack Mitzrayim. Okay, so he places a smart ruler, a smart military tactician knows to protect his flanks. Okay, so in front of him he's got the Red Sea. So anybody coming across to attack him from that direction, they can see him a long way off. Goshen, that's a different story. Somebody coming through that area could eventually get into Mitzrayim, or coming in from the west into Egypt. They could actually do that, or from the south. But that's three fronts that he actually has to guard against. Well, if he's got the Jews, Bnei Israel, in Goshen, then that one entrance into the land is already guarded. He already has a buffer there. He knows that these people are strong, they're going to fight, and because they owe it to Paro, because essentially he gave them food and stuff during the time of famine. Okay? Regardless of whether, Hashem had put Yosef there to make sure it happened, he understood who Hashem was, and he treated Yosef, his father, and his brothers, and all their families very, very well. So he places them in there. Yosef says, why don't you put them there? And he says, it's not a bad idea, because they can actually protect my flank over there. That way I only have to guard two areas rather than having to guard 3 areas. Okay, so again, just my theory. Geketa's joined us. All right, Geketa's here. Okay, so I'm just kind of rambling on right now. Just my own private theory. Okay, so when the battle goes bad for Paro and his people actually make it through Goshen and up into an area where they would be safe. They could plan their, marshal their forces, marshal their allies, and return and retake the land of Mitzrayim. However, my thought is that Paro died before he could actually put all this together. And now that Paro has died, this new king knows that there's no threat coming from that area. He's pretty well safe. Paro is no longer, so therefore there's no alliances or anything that he can depend on. So he no longer has to worry. So now he can go about and enslave the Jews that are there. Okay, so now that I've had got my crazy theories out there, and okay, so we are going to go on after all this time. There is no commentary on 9, so we'll go from 9 to 10. 9 says, and he said to his people, behold, the people, the children of Israel, are more numerous and stronger than we. See? Kind of goes along with my theory. He knew these people were strong people. Okay, verse 10. Come, let us act wisely, or shrewdly, to it, lest it become numerous, and it may, that if war will occur, it may join our enemies and wage war against us, and go up from the land. Okay, so again, this feeds right into what my thoughts were, is that, okay, so Paro is trying to marshal his allies and his forces up in this region beyond Goshen, and this king is worried about it because he knows this is a strong people, and if they join with the enemy, who's his enemy? Paro and his people. And of course, Bnei Israel feels some kind of loyalty towards Paro, because they had been treated very well by Paro, that naturally they would join forces with Paro and his allies to retake Mitzrayim. Okay, so getting back to Rashi, come, let us act wisely. Every appearance in Scripture of the word hava is an expression of preparation. Hazma'ana v'davar hu. And get ready for some, and getting ready for some matter, as if to say, prepare yourselves for this purpose. Let us act wisely. To the nation, that is, let us act wisely and with regard to what to do. Our rabbis interpret this phrase Let us outsmart God, the Savior of Israel, by afflicting the Israelites with water, for he had already sworn that he will not bring another flood upon the world. They did not understand that his oath meant that he would not bring a flood upon the entire world, but he would bring a flood on a single nation. Okay. Continue on. Make sure this is still 10. Yes, it is. And it will go up from the land against our will. Our rabbis interpret this phrase by comparing Paro to a person who curses himself, but directs his curse at others so as to avoid being the object of his own curse. It is as if the Torah had written, and we will ascend from the land, and Israel will take possession of it. Okay, so the further commentary on this one. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so as it regards, let us act wisely to this nation. The further commentary says we would expect the verse to use the plural pronoun lechem to them, rather than the singular pronoun lo to it, since the antecedent is the Israelites. Rashi explains that the plural refers back to the collective noun nation, in verse 9. Okay, with regard to act wisely with regard to what to do to them, the phrase could have been misunderstood as saying, let us make ourselves wiser than it, or let us make ourselves wise in its estimation. With regards to let us outsmart God, the Savior of Israel, according to this interpretation, lo to him refers to God, thus accounting for the singular form. And then with regard to, and he swore already that he will not bring another flood upon the world. The Egyptians knew that God metes out judgment measure for measure, i.e., the punishment reflects the sin that had been committed. The Egyptians thought that by having sworn not to bring another flood upon the world, God had barred himself from punishing sins committed through water. Okay. Continuing on, with regard to it will go up from the land against our will. The further commentary says, why should this be a problem? If the Egyptians were afraid that the Israelites will ally themselves with Egypt's enemies, would it not be to Egypt's advantage for the Israelites to leave? Rashi explains that Paro meant that there would nevertheless be cause for distress on the part of the Egyptians, for the Israelites were in reality their slaves, whose servitude they did not wish to lose. Okay, Rashi kind of jumping ahead in the story a little bit. Okay, so we're going to move on to verse 11 now. So they appointed, keep track of the time here, I'll get rolling here, and so they appointed tax collectors over it in order to afflict it with burdens. It built strong cities for Paro, Pithom, and Ramses. Rashi goes on to say, Rashi got a lot to say on this one. Over the nation. Taxes. This is the plural of the word mas, tax. Accordingly, we are officials who raise or raised the tax from the Israelites. What was the tax? That they should build storage cities for Paro, in order to afflict it with their burdens. This refers to the shell, Mitzrayim shell of Egypt. Storage cities. The meaning of the term is, as Targum Onkelos renders it, likewise we find the root, nun, in the verse, go approach the clerk, where Sochein clerk means the treasurer in charge of storehouses, Pithom and Ramses, that first they were not fit for this purpose, i.e. storage. Israel made them strong and fortified for storage. Okay, so the further commentary on this one says, let's see, over the nation. Unlike the appearance of the word lo to him in verse 10 above, which could refer to either the nation or God, in this verse, the only reference for the singular pronoun Aleph over it is the nation. As it regards has to do with plural of taxes. Finally, we are. And I forgot. Oh, there it is. The word mas or mace. Mas. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. The further commentary says the plural mas tax is misim, just as the plural of pat bread is patim, from Ibn Ezra. Okay, and the officials who would raise the taxes from the Israelites, referring to that, the first commentary says, Rashi differs from Targum Onkelos, who renders the term as malicious officials. As it regards refers to the burdens of Egypt. The further commentary says the plural pronoun there cannot refer to Israelites, for if it were, the meaning of the verse would have said to afflict it with its burdens, using the singular pronoun to refer to the Israelites, making the pronoun parallel to the singular pronoun of Anatom, or to afflict them with their burdens, using the single pronoun in each word. The combination of a singular to afflict him with the plural with their burdens indicates that the Egyptians gave the Israelites gave the Israelites the Egyptians hard work to do. Okay. With regards to storage cities, as Targum Onkelos renders it, Targum Onkelos renders cities as storehouses. Rashi describes our verse as storehouses for grain. And, okay, as it regards and Israel made them strong and fortified for storage. The further commentary says that if the cities were newly constructed by the Israelites, it should have said, he built storage cities for Paro, and he, Paro, named them Pithom and Ramses. The verse, as it stands, implies that the names were already in use for these locations before the Israelites did any construction. Therefore, these were not new constructions, they were rehabs. Okay. So obviously the Hebrews were into flipping. Okay. Okay, so we are going to take our break. That worked out pretty well. We are going to take our break, and when we return, we will pick up with verse 12, and we'll see what else is bothering Rashi. So, stay tuned, and we will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay. So, we left off on verse 12. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, we are beginning our study of the Sefer Shemot. We are on this is chapter 1 and verse 12. But as much as they would afflict it, so it would increase, and so it would burst forth. And they were disgusted because of the children of Israel, Bnei Israel. Rashi goes on to say, but as much as they would afflict it, as much as the Egyptians would set their hearts to afflict Israel, so the heart of the Holy One, blessed is He, was set to increase them and to make them burst forth. Rashi goes on, so it would increase. This means, so it was increasing, so it was bursting forth. The Midrashic interpretation is that the Holy One, the Holy Spirit is saying, you say, lest it will increase, but I say prophetically, just so I shall increase. That is why the future is used. And they were disgusted. They were disgusted with their lives. Our rabbis interpret the word vayikutsu as deriving from the word kotz, thorn, in the sense it means that Israel were like thorns in the Egyptians' eyes. Okay. So, the further commentary on this one says, as it relates to it's got to be here somewhere. There's a 2, but there's a, oh, there's the 1. Okay. Way up there, hidden, as much as it would afflict it. Although most editions read Bechol, with all, the reading should be Chachol, as much as, so that the phrase is parallel to the next one, which begins with Cain. So, indeed, in the first printed edition of Rashi has this reading. Okay, we know there are a number of different, the Al-Kabetz edition, and so on and so forth. Okay. As it regards to the Holy One making them burst forth, the further commentary says the Egyptians had already afflicted Israel, therefore the past tense, therefore the Be'anu, they would, or they had afflicted, is the expected form. The use of Ya'anu, they would afflict, in the future tense implies that God's corresponding blessing took effect as soon as the Egyptians intended to afflict Israel, even before the actual affliction took place. See Rashi, verse 15:1 below for another example of future tense indicating intent. Okay, where it refers to and bursting forth, further commentary says, as mentioned above, God's blessing to increase took effect as soon as the Egyptians intended to afflict Israel. If the verse meant to show how great the blessing was, it should have used verbs in the present tense. So to increase, so it burst forth, to indicate the blessing had already taken effect. Rashi explains that the verb in the future tense can also denote the past. In the case of the future, the future may indicate past progressive. Was increasing, was bursting forth, and thus can be understood as to say that the blessing did, in fact, take effect. Okay, so as it regards were disgusted with their lives, the verse does not say that the Egyptians were disgusted with Yitzhak. Rashi fills in the phrase with which supplies the object of their disgust, so that the verse following it follows the form used in Bereshit 27:46. I am disgusted with my life on account of the daughters of Heth. In a like manner, Rashi fills in the phrase in Numbers 22:3, where it also does not appear. Okay, so you can further file that away for further reference. And okay, so now we're on to verse 13. The Egyptians enslaved the children of Israel with crushing labor. Let me just back up here. Yeah. Okay. So Rashi says that with crushing labor, this means with hard work that crushes the body and breaks it. The further commentary on this one says from Shemot Rabbah and Tractate Sota, Folio 11b, the Talmud there offers two meanings for the word beferech. Our verse beferech is derived from the root to crush. There's a contraction of two words with a soft mouth, with a glib talk. Rashi here cites only one meaning because it is the only meaning the word can have when it is repeated in verse 14 below. Okay, so we go on to 14. There is no commentary on 14, so we'll go from 14 to 15. They embittered their lives with hard work, with mortar and bricks, and with every labor of the field. All their labors that they performed were with crushing labor. Verse 15. The king, again, says king, Melech, instead of Pharaoh. The king of Mitzrayim said to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the names were, the first was Shifra, and the name of the second was Pua. Let's see if Rashi's actually going to talk about, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, so Rashi says, to the midwives. It has the meaning of the word, those who assist a woman in childbirth. But there is a simple form, and there is an intensive form, such as breaks and shatters, and says and speaks. Such is the relationship between Molid and Mayaled, both of which mean assisting in childbirth. Shifra, this is Yachaved. She is called Shifra because she beautifies the child at birth. Pua, this is Miriam. She is called Pua because she cries and speaks and coos to the children in the manner of women who soothe a crying baby. Also, Pua, the name Pua is an expression of crying out, like the word Ephah, in the verse, I will cry out like a woman in childbirth. Okay, so the further commentary on this one says that regards to, gotta be here somewhere. There's 4. There's 1. Okay, but this is a simple form, and there is a simple form. There is an intensive form. Of the 7 binyanim forms of verbal conjugation, 4 are called kal, light, which are characterized by the absence of a dagesh, hazak, strong dagesh, in the middle letter of the root. These 4 forms are kal, nifal, hifil, and hufal. The other forms are called kaved, heavy, or intensive. They are characterized by the dagesh, hazak, in the second letter of the root. These 3 forms are piel, pual, and hispael. Using the example of Rashi, molid is a light, hifil, causative participle that means assisting a woman in childbirth. Mayaled is an intensive pl participle that means the same thing. Often the intensive grammatical form indicates more intensive action than the light form. Accordingly, molid is used for normal childbirth, while mayaled indicates a difficult birth requiring more intensive assistance from the midwife. So there you go. I'm sure you have all been just wondering about that all this time, and now you know. Okay. Moving along, this one breaks and shatters. The root shinverash means to break. The simple kal form shover implies breaking an object in 2. The intensive pl form mishaber, yeah, mishaber, indicates shattering an object. Okay. With regards to, this probably has to do with shufra. Oh no, and speaks. The instance of the simple kal form is dovar, and the intensive pl form is midaber, are synonymous. Okay, next one is this is about Pua. This is Miriam. The further commentary says the word here, ha'echad, the one, juxtaposed with hasheni, the second, indicates that the first, Shifra, was in a certain sense superior to the other. Thus Rashi sees Shifra as the mother and Pua as the daughter. And since the Torah reveals rather than conceals, they must be the mother and daughter mentioned elsewhere in the story, namely Yocheved and Miriam. Okay, so we move on now to 16. And he said, in your assisting of the Hebrew woman at childbirth, and you see on the birth stool, if it is a son, you are to kill him, and if it is a daughter, she shall live. Rashi goes on to say, in your assisting at childbirth, the word has the same meaning as the word when you assist in childbirth. On the birth stool, the Avnaim, the stool of the woman in childbirth. Elsewhere, the prophet calls it mashber. Similar to it is the Naim in the verse, doing work over the settling. There, too, the word can be used in the sense of a seat, for it can mean the setting place of a potter's tool of trade. If it is a son, he was concerned only about the males, for the astrologers told him that a boy was destined to be born that would save Israel. She shall live. This means the same as and she will live. Okay. Further commentary on this one says that regarding when you assist in childbirth, okay, here we go into the intensive and the different forms. Yeah, basically, he's just talking about the difference between the passive and the intensive forms of the word. So we'll move on here. Okay, so she shall live. This means the same as and she will live. The word does not imply that the midwives had to make any special efforts to ensure the survival of the infant girls. It simply means that the baby girl will live through their own capacity for survival. Targum Onkelos translates the word as, and you will keep her alive. Targum Yonatan renders it, and she will live. Rashi appears to be opting for the later interpretation. Verse 17. But the midwives feared God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt spoke to them, and they kept the boys alive. Rashi goes on to say, and they kept the boys alive. They supplied them with water and food. The word, well, I just keep this in my hand. Vathayin appears here and again in verse 18. Targum Onkelos translates the first appearance. First appearance is Vakayamten, Kemtem. You will let live. While his translation of the second appearance of the word is "and you let live," because in the Hebrew language, as opposed to Aramaic, of the Targum, for a female plural, this word and others of like form serve as both "they did," i.e., third-party plural past tense, and "you did," i.e., second-person plural present tense. I'm sure you all were wondering about that. It is comparable to in the phrase, and they said, an Egyptian man, which is the past tense of the feminine equivalent of the masculine third person plural past tense of Aleph Mem Resh, to say, while the feminine form of the phrase, and you spoke with your mouths. This is the second person plural tense of to speak, and is the feminine equivalent of the masculine second person plural, and is the feminine equivalent of the past tense to speak. Similarly, the feminine form of the phrase, and you profane me to my people, is the past tense second person plural. To profane is the feminine equivalent of the masculine second person plural past tense of to profane. I hated English. And it shows. Okay. So we're going on to no commentary on 18. So go from 18 to 19. Let's keep an eye on the time here. The king of, I'm going to keep harping on that. You know it. I'm just going to keep harping on it until they actually start switching. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this thing, that you keep the boys alive?" Verse 19, the midwives said to Paro, "Because the Hebrew women are unlike the Egyptian women, for they are midwives. Before the midwife comes to them, they have given birth." Rashi goes on to say, "For they are midwives. They, the women of Israel, are expert as midwives at delivering babies." Targum Onkelos translation of of midwives is a word very similar to hayatam, a word similar to hayot, but our rabbis interpret this phrase as meaning the Israelite women are compared to beasts of the field who do not need midwives. And where are they compared to beasts? Before the death of Yaakov and Moshe, before their deaths, Yaakov and Moshe each blessed the individual tribes. Among their blessings was a lion cub is Yehudah. Benjamin is a wolf who devours his prey. In reference to Yosef, the firstborn is an ox. Naphtali is a fleet gazelle. As for the tribe about whom such a metaphor is not written in the Torah, Scripture included them all into one category in the phrase, "and he, Yaakov, blessed them." Furthermore, it is written, "What is your mother? A lioness." Okay, lots of extra commentary on this one. So, I think I forgot to put the numbers in on here. Oh, here we are. They do not need midwives. Okay, the further commentary says from Tractate Sota, Folio 11b, both interpretations cited by Rashi are found in the Talmud. However, the Talmud rejects the first explanation. They are as expert as midwives, for midwives in labor still need midwives to assist them in childbirth. Nevertheless, Rashi cites the first interpretation because the Talmud's objection can be answered. It does not mean that they were not in need of assistance, but they were able to call their closest neighbors who did not have to search for a professional midwife. Makes sense. Okay. Okay, so with regard to, we'll go all the way down here. As a metaphor, as for a tribe about whom such a metaphor is not written in the Torah, the scripture included them all into one category in the phrase, and he, Yaakov, blessed them all. The further commentary says, regarding Bereshit 49:28, Rashi there says that the phrase indicates that blessings of each individual tribe were shared by all the tribes. Thus, the entire nation of Israel is compared to beasts. Simple enough. Okay. Wanted to get to that. Yeah, your mother. What is your mother a lioness? Where does that come from? Okay, where does it come from? It comes from Ezekiel 19:2. That verse shows that the comparison to beasts is common to all Israel, for it does not refer to any particular tribe. And then, your mother, what is your mother, a lioness? We have to go to Shemot Rabbah 1:16 and Tractate Sota, Folio 11b to find out. Okay, so we are going on to verse 20 now, if we have time. Yeah, we got time. Got plenty of time. Okay, verse 20, God did good. Wow. Boy, I picked a I picked a wrong one to say we're going to go on with. So we're going to go on with it anyway. Verse 20. Because there's like 3 pages of Rashi's commentary on that verse. Okay. So God did good to the midwives, and the people increased and became very strong. Okay, so God did good. This means He did good to them. This is a distinctive feature of the word whose root is composed of only 2 letters. It receives a vav and a yud at its beginning when it speaks in the causative. Okay, here we go again. Fill. Third person singular, past tense, expressed by. I think Rashi got into a whole thing on grammar and structure at this point. Which we see him do, and I don't know what it is that triggers him to do this, but all of a sudden he just starts going off on a tangent and talking about structure and sentence and past and first person singular participle, this, that, and the other thing. Okay. So, when it speaks in the causative, hifil, third person singular, past tense, expressed by prefixing the conversive vav to the future form, the yud is vowelized with a tere, which is also known as a kametz katan, or with a sagol, which is also known as a patach katan. For example, Vaitev, in our verse, and God did good to the midwives. The word Vayerev, and he increased in the daughter of Yehuda. Mourning means he increased mourning. Similarly, the rule is illustrated by the phrase concerning the exile carried out by Nebuzaradan, which means he exiled the remnant. Similar words concerning Shimson's act mean he turned the tails to each other. This is regarding the foxes. When he tied the torches to the foxes' tails. So he turned the foxes to, tails together. Which is probably more information than you wanted, but there you go. You got it. Okay, and then I lost my place. Oh, he turned the tails to each other. These are expressions of causing something to happen to others. But then the two-letter root preceding the Vav and the Yud speaks in the simple call. The third person past tense, which is expressed by prefixing the conversive Vav and the future form. The word is vowelized with a Yud having a hirik, such as the word Vayitev in the verse, and it was good in his eyes. It means, and it was good, as opposed to he did good for others of our verse. Similarly, the phrase Vayerev in our verse, the nation itself increased. The phrase means Yehuda went into exile. The phrase so on means he turned himself to the side, and that do not respond to me. And the verse he went, he descended, he sat, and he went forth are not causative verbs in the Hifil, yet they have a Yud vowelized by a Tzereh, because they are not of the same class. And these that we have been discussing, for in them the Yud is the root letter. In these verbs, Yitzo, Yerod, Yashov, Yaloch, and the Yud is the third letter of the root. And God did good to the midwives. What was the goodness? That which is stated in the next verse, which is where we will pick up next week. Okay. Now that we got the big language lesson done here, I tell you what, I would have hated to have Rashi for a teacher. I mean, seriously. I mean, the guy was absolutely brilliant, but I mean, sometimes he gets off on a rant, and you're going, where did he get that from? Okay. So we have completed the study. So we say the bracha for that. Baruchat Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'zuchinu baruchat Adonai noten haTorah. Okay, so we almost made it through the first chapter. We're one verse of making it through the first chapter. And, Kelsey Lynn. Oh, okay. I see Kelsey Lynn made it. And Simon. Yeah. So much for paying attention to the chat room, like I said I was going to do earlier. Okay. So, thank you for being here. Don't forget that Friday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, Kabbalat and Mariv, the Shabbat service. And then Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, Shachrit and Musaf. And, of course, Mondays are Zeta Story Corner. And Wednesdays, we'll be right back here again, God willing. And until then, we will say, Laila Tov.